Namaskar, welcome. Well, the 5th World IT Forum, WITFOR 2012, was held in New Delhi under the theme Sustainable Human Development. It had 4 parallel themes, which were agriculture, education, health, and e-governance. Well, to get a perspective of what this conference was all about and how ICT can really help in development of developing countries, especially a large country like ours, we have in the studio, we're privileged to have an eminent panel. We are joined by Professor Geoff Walsham, Professor of Management Studies, Judge Business School, Cambridge University. Thank you very much for being with us.
Pleasure.
We're joined by Vikas Nath, who's the Associate Director of the Future of the United Nations Project, Environment and Agriculture. Thanks very much for being with us. And Professor Chrisanthi Avgeroiu is Professor, London School of Economics, and also co-chair of the International Program Committee, WITFOR. Thank you very much, ma'am, for being with us. We'll start with you, Professor Walsham. I mean, we understand a country like India, which has so many different languages, so many different cultures, and it all falls under one composite culture, one says, which is an Indian identity. Can ICT, penetrate the barriers in a country like ours, one from the language point of view?
From the language point of view, yes, well, of course, language is undoubtedly a major and important factor in the diversity of India, and I think one to be welcomed personally. Nevertheless, of course, it does add challenges that if you develop a system in Karnataka, then it needs to be, particularly, for example, in the health area, it needs to be available to the health workers, and it therefore needs to be in the local language.
Absolutely.
And thus, that is a challenge, a particular challenge. Nevertheless, I don't think that's an impossible challenge that we face. So there's lots of experience of translating systems into different languages, etc. And I think there are some more severe challenges to the role of technology than language.
You think so? What are those? I mean, given the Indian context.
Okay, put simply, people is I think in the sense that if you take again health as an example. The easier part in trying to create or use computers in health systems, and we all recognise the need for computers in health systems to collect and analyse data, to target health programmes, and therefore to deliver better health to the people of the country.
Right.
But the issue is you can put in the computers and you can put in the software and you can put in the systems. However, the traditional approach and culture of health workers is to see data as something that you collect because you're told to do so and you pass it upwards in a hierarchical system. What we're now trying to do is see data as something that you collect and use at that level. Okay. And you need to create a culture of information use, and thus the people side becomes, in some senses, more important than the technology side, since the technology has now improved dramatically.
Fair enough. And the people are important, Mr. Nath, but in agriculture, I mean, most of our users will probably not be able to afford the services that are being provided. Are they going to be provided free? And some of the models that have already been applied have stopped because there's no financing.
Right. Agriculture, as you know, is one of the mainstay occupation for in context of India, and farmers are dependent on rain. I mean, I would say the first priority is to get the rain on time. If you have the rainfall on time, a lot of things will get set into motion. Yes, technology can help. It can help a lot of ways to the farmers, but we'll have to be careful about not oversimplifying the problem on technology. There can be solutions which can be provided not just through private sectors but through the public sector. A big role of the states is to provide the right agriculture extension, the right agriculture technology to the farmers. Now, technology can play a supporting role in that, but it cannot compensate for the lack of the basic agriculture services which need to be provided by the government. And we can't make these kind of services sustainable. I mean, private sector can, for example, come in and make some of these models sustainable. But in essence, a lot of these basic...
What are these services you're talking about that the public sector should be providing?
Well, most fundamental would be the knowledge about what kind of, for example, seeds we should be made available. Are they kind of seeds which will give the right kind of productivity? Do they have the access to the right kind of capital? I mean, because of the farming size, which is very small, most of the land, the small farmers may not have the access to the right kind of capital at the right time. Having the information about when the next rainfall is going to happen can make a lot of difference to the output. Then access to the right kind of technology. Okay. Small farms need very specific technology. And finally, on the marketing and distribution sides, we don't have enough transportation. Our roads are sometimes really bad, that even though you know where the products could be sold, but if you're not able to take to the markets at the right time, the refrigeration and the transportation systems, these need to be focused upon. So technology, I really do not think would address all these problems, and hence the issue of sustainability will not come at this stage of the Indian agriculture.
So you're saying that the physical infrastructure really needs to be developed first before you can talk about a technological infrastructure being built, or what do you say?
I would say we should not overemphasize the role of information technology at the expense of not being able to build on other infrastructure. Focus on the other infrastructure, and then you can complementarily see what can be the role of technology in there.
Professor Avgeroiu, the whole purpose of e-governance is to speed up information and help in decision making and citizens participating, etc. But in a country like ours, in India, which again has a language issue with each state having there are different systems of governance. Do you think that issues of infrastructure, high maintenance costs of these sort of setting up this kind of infrastructure are going to be the big stumbling blocks in developing e-governance across the country?
You mean technology infrastructures?
Technology infrastructure.
Technology infrastructures are open opportunities for better government, and I'm impressed with how much is happening in this country. Okay. I think indeed there is quite a lot to pay attention to in this country. You have the technology, you have the know-how, you have the industry, very dynamic. But while the putting in place the infrastructure and having the goodwill for that is very promising, very important, nevertheless, there are other challenges which are extremely important, and they need to be faced straight ahead. The biggest stumbling block from me is reform. Okay. If you just put technology in an organization as it is, as historically it has accumulated all kinds of dysfunctionalities, then you run the risk of just freezing these dysfunctionalities and carrying on with a very dysfunctional organization. Okay. If we come now to the government sector, in many countries, including India, from the little I know, there are all sorts of difficult areas in the public sector in service delivery. Red tape, bureaucracy, and there are opportunities of doing better than that, but it will not just automatically follow the putting in place the infrastructures. Okay. It will not even come automatically by what we may call open government, in the sense that providing front-end tools for communication with the citizens. It will not even happen with starting talking about the consumer rather than the citizen, although that also indicates a service-oriented kind of mentality. It is extremely important to face the difficult questions of how you restructure the government, how you change behaviors, how you change attitudes. And this is a huge reorganization effort, the most difficult in all countries, not only India, and very much dependent on political change. It's much more a political question, organizational management question, and of course it requires technology.
Well, Professor Walsham, it's a political question, but the point is that the role of government, it's not only providing services, it's a regulator, and it has to, stop things from happening as well. Certain things that are not conducive. How does ICT come in as to help a regulator?
Well, I feel that the regulatory role of government is already well exercised. I mean, there is an argument that says that government is too rigid and too closed, and that technology offers an opportunity perhaps to see some relaxation in that. But many people, and I think I would be one of them, would see this as an enormous challenge, in the sense that old-style approaches, not just in India but in many governments around the world, whilst it's easy to talk about bringing in new systems that enable more open government, more citizen participation, again coming back to the people who are there within the systems, who've got born and bred and grown up in those systems, it's very hard to change the minds. In fact, generally speaking, across the sort of sectors we've been talking about, I think the fundamental challenge with technology is to change the people's mindset. By people here, it's both consumers of technology or citizens, if you prefer, either way, but also the people in government service, whether health workers, education workers, government workers of other sorts, so that they have a less hierarchical, bureaucratic approach to the world, and something that is more in keeping with what we'd like to see, I think, in terms of flatter structures, flatter hierarchies, more open government, etc.
Well, we'll take a quick commercial break now, and when we come back, there's still a lot more to discuss. Do stay with us.
खुशियां बांटने से ही बढ़ती हैं, तो कोका कोला पिलाओ, खुशियां बढ़ाओ।
बाल श्रम एक दंडनीय अपराध है। ये कानून 14 साल से कम उम्र के किसी भी बच्चे को घरेलू नौकर, ढाबे पर कर्मचारी या और किसी भी घातक काम में लगाने से रोकता है। अगर कोई व्यक्ति ऐसा करता है तो उसे 3 महीने से लेकर 1 साल तक की सजा के साथ साथ 10,000 से 20,000 रुपए तक का जुर्माना भुगतना पड़ सकता है।
बच्चों से काम मत कराइए, उन्हें पढ़ाई का हक है, उनका सही जगह स्कूल है।
Welcome back. Well, Mr. Nath, let's look at agriculture, since you're an expert in this field. One of the big concerns is in marketing, because we feel that, you know, a lot of our products, they perish before they reach the markets. Can ICT really help in, you know, in improving not only marketing but also food processing and these other areas which can save some of the products?
Right. I think here the underlying assumption is that all the farmers have something to trade, whereas India is a land of small farmers, which means that food security is an issue. So first of all, the food is the whatever grows is used for, you know, keeping aside some for the seed, some for the, you know, the domestic consumption, and if there is any left, first of all to repay the loans, and then if there is any surplus, really surplus, then it to market it for other purposes. So once we understand the whole chain of how a farmer operates, I'm not talking about large farmers. I mean, they can find their own solutions. But when you're talking about the development
let's focus
agenda,
on the smaller farmers.
The development agenda, the small farmers, yes, so they have small produce, small surpluses. That is not going to give them any negotiating power. It's not like there are big chains of buyers there who are willing to negotiate with a small producer.
So suppose they get together, I mean, and, you know, form cooperatives and things like that.
Now you're talking
we're talking
that's the development side. Now
yes.
we're talking about farmers coming together, you know, forming cooperatives, federations, and then having a negotiating power. And once they already have a cooperative and negotiating power, then they can negotiate at their terms. Okay. Now, if technology can play a role in negotiating at their terms, that's fine. But the issue is, by the time
what about technology playing a role in bringing them together in the first place?
That's true. Technology can play some role in bringing them together. I mean, a lot of things may happen from the word of mouth. I mean, the villages, if they're getting together, if there are some kind of government, for example, extension agents who can brief them on what are the nearby markets or what are the produce which are getting the most remunerative returns, you know, then they can start with planting the right kind of crop in the fields. And so the process of getting the right prices starts far before actually harvesting the crop, and, you know, and then having those last 2 days to sell the crop at a nearby market. So once they have
what about them having access to information, you know, of best practices from, let's say, the advanced world where produce from a particular farm is much higher?
I would say, I mean, they would far better benefit if they can get good practices from their own countries first, because we have the same.
We have unique practices.
Unique and good practices. I mean, we can always learn from what's happening internationally, but I think India being a big agriculture producer, I mean, we ourselves have a lot of R&D going on. So I think we can learn from our own lab to land practices. You know, we have to get the good practices which are coming up in our agriculture, state agriculture universities, different agriculture centers. And if technology can play a role in empowering the agriculture extensionists themselves, I'm not even interested in empowering the last mile.